What is up, Canada? What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the new trend of working from home, as well as are Canadians fleeing major cities to move to cheaper cost areas from a real estate perspective? This definitely has huge implications if it's true for us as real estate investors. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing who is actually working from home. What are the benefits from working from home? What are some of the disadvantages? And is out-migration really a thing? And is it something that's actually going to affect our cities? And are there any previous examples that we can use and build upon their long-term consequences to maybe draw some conclusions for ourselves as real estate investors? So not sure if you guys have noticed, but there's this global pandemic thing going on. And it's really mixing up and shaking up the way people do work. And in fact, right now, I'm doing this from my home. I'm in front of a standing desk. In the last year, I've honestly probably spent like $2,000 or $3,000 on standing desks for myself and the team. We probably bought a dozen of those. I don't even know how many webcams I bought at this point in time, but I'm pretty sure I'm talking to like the fifth or sixth webcam I personally have bought this year or last year. And as well, I think every one of my team members have bought a webcam. So obviously, a lot of us are adapting to this new world, this new economy that the pandemic is forcing upon us and the government regulation that's come out of the pandemic as well. So with all the negatives surrounding the pandemic, there's been a handful of interesting, potentially positives, you could even call it. So over the past year, understand that over 2.4 million Canadians who normally don't work from home have worked from home. And this new experience is coloring their perspective when it comes to work and their working arrangement with their job provider as well. So a survey found that 80% of employees would want to work from home at least part-time going forward, with 29% of us preferring a half and half situation. Of the employers that could work I stumbled over those words, didn't I? Of the employers that could offer work from home situations, around 60% are unlikely to offer anything of the sort, while around 30% are likely, with 10% unsure. And around 50% of employers can't offer any kind of work from home situation due to the nature of their work. Think of construction or restaurants, things of that nature. So again, it's interesting. It sounds like some employers are open to the idea, but they're definitely not embracing it nearly as fast as employees are. And this means that employees and employers are at odds. 80% of the employees want to work from home, and 60% of businesses that could offer it don't want to. So it's hard to tell which party will come out on top, but definitely, what happens in the next year may really dictate that, because I'm not sure how long businesses can afford to ignore the potential of work from home. So let's cover some of the quick benefits when it comes to working from home. So obviously, you can have a more flexible work schedule. There's potential for more breaks, right? There's potential tax breaks as well. There's less of a commute time. Your location's more independent. There's general monetary savings for both the employee, who doesn't have to travel, as well as the employer, which doesn't have to provide an office. There's potentially increased productivity, though the jury's still out on that. There's companies that save money on those office space and supplies. Even just some meetings no longer are necessary because we don't have an office. And there's also increased hiring potential with international candidates. Now, again, this can create some complexities for the business owner, but there is still potential there. And there's less office politics. Presumably, people feel more comfortable with their attire, more time with family and friends, potentially, as well as, in theory, less sick time. Because, you can probably do some work from home, whereas in the past, if you had to work at the office, maybe you couldn't bring your office home with you. And then finally, there's also more time potentially for you to enjoy hobbies or exercise, improve your overall happiness, in theory. And some disadvantages are there's some decreased willpower. There's increased bad habits for some of us. There's the potential to miss important meetings or deadlines because we're not really on that clock schedule. There's the dietary issue. Maybe you're ordering Uber Eats every day now instead of going to a local restaurant. There's boredom and mundane, repetitive tasks, or even worse sometimes at your home setting, where there's so much competing for your attention or drawing you to do something a little bit more interesting. There's also social issues, which are particularly compounded right now with quarantine, social distancing, and all the measures our government has enacted. Maybe you've got Wi-Fi issues as well. You definitely need a good internet connection if you're going to work from home these days. But one of the big concerns for me as an employer is potentially the impact on your company culture. Really, what's the team spirit going to be like if we're so disconnected? In fact, one of the things that we're doing here at my company is we're implementing virtual water cooler time with new hires. So understand that if you're a new hire and you join my team, you're probably going to spend probably an hour, 2 hours a week, literally just bumping into people virtually at water cooler talks. So I literally meet with every new employee in my business for 15 minutes once a week just to chat with them one-on-one. These are where those conversations that would never otherwise happen. When we're at the water cooler and bump into each other, maybe we talk about our favorite Netflix show or TV show or a sport they're passionate about or a celebrity that they're interested in or a musician they enjoy. But when we're really just on Zoom meeting after meeting after meeting, there's not that chance for cross collaboration. There's no pollination, right? There's no chance for us to accidentally bump into each other. And I really do think that's going to be one of the big disadvantages for employers, is just the random unintended bonuses that come from people being in close proximity to each other and being able to bounce ideas and opinions off of one another and sharing their experiences. In fact, Tony Hsieh in his book, Delivering Happiness, discovered this concept, or discusses this concept, where he says that for Zappos specifically, some of their best ideas occurred at the bar that was right beside the office, and it wasn't actually occurring in the office. It was those after office hours where employees were chatting and hanging out socially that sometimes drifted towards work that often would actually create some of the best ideas that Zappos ever had. And I definitely agree with that with my personal experience with my company. But let's move on now to out-migration. So there's also an impact on Canadian cities, not just employers. So the biggest one being this out-migration. So out-migration typically refers to the migration away from major economic hubs towards more rural areas. And Canadians are doing this a lot more now than they have been in the past. In fact, there's not a lot of data out here, but we found that Toronto has lost over 50,000 people since July 2019. That's on a one-year basis, and Montreal has lost over 25,000 people. This is more than we would have normally expected. Again, we've got links to everything we're talking about in the video description down below if you guys want to learn more. But understand, these work from home initiatives with normal in-office paychecks are giving some Canadians the opportunity to move to better places, whether it be, bigger apartments, larger properties, bigger homes, more space. All they need to do is move from the high cost of living area like Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal and move to a lower cost of area like, London, Ontario, or even places like Sarnia, Windsor, or anywhere and everywhere in between. And so places like Oshawa have seen their population grow by 2.1% over the same time period. So further studies from U-Haul have shown some interesting things as well. The Canadians are interested in a whole bunch of cities outside of the main population centers, with North Bay, who'd have thought it, North Bay topping the list. BC seems to be slightly less affected, although people seem to be leaving Vancouver for North Vancouver. And nationally, vacancy rates sat at 3.2% in October 2020 compared to 2% in October 2019. So while this is an increase, and in theory, it's a decent size increase at 50%, overall, when we look at where traditionally vacancy rates are at, we're still very much in a landlord's market where there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of people competing over limited stock when it comes to rental units. So when we're looking at what's going on with vacancy rates, Toronto comes in at 3.4% compared to a number that normally sits around closer to 2%. And Montreal is at 2.7%, and it's normally considered to be closer to 1.1%. Vancouver is at 2.6%, and again is often 1.1%. Edmonton and Calgary are around 7%. So they're definitely being hit a lot more because of the energy sector, the Keystone Pipeline. There's a lot of things going on in Alberta right now that are impacting them significantly, which is also impacting their vacancy rates. So furthermore, downtown areas of these cities seem to be affected the most. For downtown Toronto, vacancy rates sit at 5.8% compared to 2.3% in those suburbs. So with all the commotion, real estate prices in smaller cities have really sparked. So the Muskoka region of Ontario, the Okanagan region in British Columbia are prime examples. But even what we're seeing here in little old London, Ontario, we're seeing a lot of people thinking about, and some choosing to move to London for the lower cost of living, while they can still earn the same paycheck that they're used to in the GTA. So if outmigration persists beyond the end of the pandemic, assuming it ever ends, our best example of the effects of these major cities are probably Atlantic Canada. So the Strait of Nova Scotia has seen its population decline since the 1960s. So this outmigration typically involves the youth population as they travel to bigger cities for the kinds of jobs that aren't available in Atlantic Canada. We can even look at a microcosm of this here in Ontario. I've done a video in the past on Sudbury and talked about how, in theory, Sudbury looks like an attractive city, but one of the issues is the lack of youth population and lack of youth in migration to that city as well. So while the city's growing, it may actually be challenged because it doesn't have enough young people. And this can cause real issues from a demographic standpoint that really then impacts economics as well of those areas. So these areas have been seeing a huge impact on the labor markets, obviously. So more lucrative jobs out of the province pulled people from Atlantic Canada to places like Alberta, Ontario, and BC, and youth populations even more drawn to these opportunities because they've got a longer life to live and they want to make the most of it, usually. So, understand that this impacts everything. This impacts succession planning. This especially is a big deal for small business owners. It's hard for small business owners to find suitable candidates to take over their businesses if we don't have the enterprising young people that really create a vibrant community and bring on the next generation of entrepreneurs that will lead our nation. So immigrants are less attracted now to the population centers with dwindling jobs as well, from a prospect perspective. But the most relatable issue to the major cities would be the loss of family and community. With people moving away, families break apart. And as these bonds break apart, it really can hollow out that sense of community that these cities once had. So while we're not saying that tomorrow Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal is about to look like Atlantic Canada, that's probably one of the better things we can look to try and, read the future a little bit if things stay on this path. Now, again, that's a huge if. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and get your perspective. Do you think we need to be worried about out-migration as real estate investors, or do you think this is all talk? Do you think Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal are world-class cities that anyone will want to live in? And the moment we're allowed to open up the migration pipeline from immigrants from other countries, that we'll have no issue satisfying the vacant units or the job needs of these large major cities. I'd love to get your thoughts, your perspectives, and just hear your opinion when it comes to all this. Are you changing your real estate investment strategy because of some of these factors? Are you pivoting? Are you getting nervous about owning property in major metro cities? Or do you think this is all just a bunch of noise and there's not an ounce of signal here? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. And as always, if you got value from this video, make sure that you smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you're new to my channel. If you guys want to watch every single weekday these videos, make sure you hit that notification bell, because Lord knows YouTube's not going to do you any favors. But really appreciate you guys engaging in the comments. Appreciate Justin jumping in, him, and everyone else that's participating in these conversations. I do want this to be a two-way conversation. So if you're watching this after the fact, let me know. Is out-migration a concern for you? Is it something you're paying attention to as a real estate investor? Or do you think Matt's just trying to go viral with another YouTube video? Let me know in that comment section down below. But I really do appreciate you guys. And again, we'll be coming with a special third video today because we're going to be talking about Robinhood, Elon Musk, and Clubhouse. So we'll see you guys in a second.